Welcome. We're here.
Thanks,
the mics
Logan.
work. Feel
Test,
good?
test. Yeah, we're
Test,
on. We're
test.
good.
Yeah, we're good.
Can you hear me?
Amazing.
Good.
There we go.
Amazing. Well, what I'd love to first start with is I'd first love to just kind of get to know you guys a little bit better. Obviously, we have the intro, but you guys are here in the flesh. So, first question for you. If you were given the ability to have any dessert right now, like it's not going to happen, just like a foreshadowing. We're not going to come out with it. But
It's
if
really disappointing.
I know, I'm sorry, but like if we said what dessert would be like your go-to dessert right now and to be right in front of you, what would you just crush right now?
Okay. Yep. A hot fudge sundae with caramel and peanuts. He almost finished it. Did you hear that? He knows.
So mine would be anybody's grandma's homemade strawberry rhubarb pie. Can't beat it.
You're
with
from
a
Minnesota.
scoop of ice cream.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Oh yeah, Minnesota. If you don't, my grandma makes a great rhubarb pie. But anyone who's not from Minnesota is like, what is rhubarb? That just sounds. It sounds like my aunt rhubarb. Like, I don't know. That's how it sounds to me. Amazing. And so tell us, how long have you guys been married? You guys have 3 girls. Tell us a little bit about that, your family, what you guys do like with your time and stuff. Like what? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so we've been married 16 years, going on 17 this summer. Yeah, you can clap for that. It gets better every year. We have 3 girls. Our oldest is 15, then 13, and then 10. And Gabby, Lauren, and Macy. I stay at home with them, and I have the honor and privilege of homeschooling them, which some days is absolutely fantastic, and other days they want to pull my hair out, and I want to pull their hair out. But most of the time, it's really, really great. And you know what? We have just chosen that lifestyle for us because that's what we felt the Lord asked us to do. I was a public school teacher before that, so it's not that we have anything against public schools. We love it, but we also really love missions at River Valley Church, and that allows us to travel. It allows us to bring the girls with us. They're all barrel racers. They love to do rodeo, and so it allows them to do their chores in the morning and at night and to be able to ride during the day. So that's kind of why we decided to homeschool.
Yeah. And I might be biased, but I think our kids are a testament that homeschool kids can be normal kids.
Yeah.
So
Anyone who's homeschooled? Anyone in here that was homeschooled?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So good. Raise the roof.
So yeah, what did you leave out? So 16 years of amazing marriage. We thought we were going to blend in tonight until we pulled up with our minivan. And we're like, yeah, we're the old people here. So, but we really feel like we're you guys' age. Like we
You
just
look pretty young.
Hey,
you know?
thanks.
Yeah.
41.
Yeah.
We're both 41. So if you're wondering. So I know everybody's thinking 16 years of marriage. They only look like they're 30. They homeschool. Like, what's with these people? That's not the case. So like Logan said, I went to the U, and then I bought a family business for my father. I'm the 3rd generation in the business. So I am in the trash, recycling, disposal world. So everything you guys are throwing away that gets out of your world then comes into my world with my business around the Twin Cities and northern Minnesota. So to put it simply, I'm a trash guy. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And how did you guys meet? Like, I know you guys grew up in the same town and grew up in what town was it in Minnesota,
Yeah,
right?
so we grew up in Jordan, Minnesota, which is about 30 miles southwest of here. We were in 7th grade when we met. I was in the public school, and Mark had went to the private elementary school, and then, that only went to 6th grade. So 7th grade, the private school and the public school came together. And Mark likes to say that's when he got to see the fresh meat. So he saw the fresh meat at the public school.
It looked good.
And we, do you want to tell him about
Were you a Christian at that time?
No.
No.
Okay.
So we...
It still looks good.
It's true, with a different lens. So in 7th grade, we actually dated for 2 weeks, because remember that 7th grade relationship of like, do you want to go out? Yes or no? Okay, maybe we'll hold hands
This is
at the
before
football
social
game.
media, remember?
That's right, before social media. So we went out for 2 weeks, and then what happened after those 2 weeks?
She dumped me for the first time.
It's true.
What was the reason in 7th grade?
I don't remember. I'm sure I just wanted to be with my friends.
Yeah, that would make sense.
You know, 7th grade, your brains are not fully developed. Actually, your brains are probably not fully developed yet. I don't mean that bad. I think it's true. Brett, you're going to be a doctor. Isn't that kind of true? Yeah. Okay.
He's not a doctor yet.
Not
a
yet.
doctor yet.
So that was 7th grade. So we went through high school. We were always friends, like kind of hung out in the same circle, never dated. She went to college down in Iowa, a university called Wartburg College in Iowa. And I went to school at the U. And lo and behold, after she got done with college, she applied all over the Midwest for teaching jobs, and she ended up getting a teaching job in Prior Lake. And because I was kind of doing the family business thing, I couldn't move far from home because our business is based at a location and you can't really move it. So I kind of always knew that was where my life was going to be. And so we started dating.
Talking.
Yeah. So we started hanging out, right? And so we hung out for about a year. So here's how it went down. We would hang out every night, do all the dating things, but we were just friends, right?
Just
According to
friends.
Emily, we were just friends. So like literally I would go to Christmas with like all of her relatives, like, right, that whole thing, and she would introduce me as, this is my friend Mark, you know? And we go to Thanksgiving, this is my friend Mark, and I'm just like,
And
seriously,
you stuck
what does it
with
take?
me. You stuck with me. It was
I did.
good.
I did. And so then, so we dated a while. I called it dating. She still called it just friends. And that was about a year and a half. And then I got to the point, and I told her, I'm like, hey, I think we should get married. And then what did she say?
And I said, oh, I think we should break up and be done.
She dumped me for the second time.
So wait, so you were essentially proposing without a ring and testing the waters, and she says, I think we should break up. Sounds like a movie.
I know, it was kind of, I was reading this book on Christian relationships, and I was like, oh, I should be single. I should not have a boyfriend, and I need to just be single and just me and God, just me and God, me and God. And so when he said that, I had just finished this book, and my eyes about popped in my head. I was like, oh, no, I can't get married right now. And so I told him no, and that went on for about 2 months, right? Yes. And I would go work out.
Longest 2 months of my life.
I would go work out at the club that we both belonged at, and I'd be running, and all of a sudden I'd see Mark lifting weights over in the corner. And then the next day, same thing. Like, he just kept popping up.
Stalker.
Yes.
Total stalker.
He just kept popping up in places that I happened to be. And it was... And it wasn't like I was dating anybody else. And finally, my mom goes, Emily, are you okay if Mark dates someone else? I was like, no, I'm not. And she goes, okay, then you need to do something about that. So then that's when I went back to Mark and said, okay, I'm in it. I'm ready for it. And then I couldn't get a ring fast enough. I was like, okay, so next month, do you think we should get engaged?
It did. It happened that fast.
But here's the thing. Here's what we want to tell you guys. Breakups aren't always bad, because there's a process that happens when breakups happen. And I'm not talking about marriage. I'm talking pre-marriage, right? We were dating. And Mark, do you just want to share what happened during our breakup?
Yeah, so during that time, so for me, I grew up Catholic, so I learned, everything there kind of was to know. I went to a private Catholic high school when I was so I knew a lot of like head knowledge. Knew what was right or wrong. I always knew what was right or wrong. Never embraced it, never took it as my own faith. And so, when I was here at the U, a Thursday night at the U, this is the last place I would be. I would be, down at First Ave or at Sally's or wherever. That was my life when I was at the U. And so just away from the Lord. But I always knew, like, hey, you know what? I know when I get out of college, I know I'm going to settle down, marry a nice girl, start going to church. That was, my thought process at the time. And so I started dating Emily. I knew Emily was, had a way stronger faith than I did. And so when that whole process of dating happened, I would always kind of go along with her, right? And I was going along with her, but knowing that hey, this church thing is good. I know I want to pursue this Jesus thing. Like, I know that's good. So I kept pursuing it, and and thought I was doing good. And then we break up, and it was during that time when just the Lord spoke to me and said, no, you are or I realized, I'm like, Lord, you are the only one that I need. And it was just where my faith became my own. Because prior to that, I was just following her. I thought it was my own, but it really wasn't. And so it was like, like when Emily says breakups are good, like if I wouldn't have had that time where it was just, because at that time, right, I was saying no to my old life, my old friends, and saying yes to her. And so really didn't have a lot of relationships at the time aside from Emily. So, those went away. So it was literally just me and Jesus. And that's when he hit me, and that's when I gave him my heart, and he became my Savior. And shortly thereafter, she wants to get married.
I saw the light.
So praise the Lord.
Yeah, Emily, I want to follow that thought, because I think something that we hear a lot, and even maybe people in this room that are dealing with this, is maybe they have in the past, or maybe even now, being with somebody that maybe doesn't share the same value, or maybe wants it and says, okay, like, I'm good with the whole God thing, but is not really on the same level. And like, it's not that Christianity is like, I'm a better Christian than you, but I do think there's a difference between, oh, I'm okay with it, and I'm seeking it, and I'm having that. As someone who is maybe further along in your faith journey, you break up with Mark, but even like before that, what are you thinking? Because I know for a lot of people, that's a very real thing to say, how Christian do they got to be? Like, do they got to say yes to Jesus and raise their hand once? Do they have to, we look at, are they the leader of this relationship? What does that even mean? Yeah. What was going through your mind at that time, and what kind of flipped for you, even seeing Mark change?
Yeah, that's good. I think I was the spiritual leader of that dating relationship at the time. I knew I didn't want to be, but I didn't really know how to change it, because I can't change him, right? Only the Holy Spirit can change him. And I really didn't even know enough to pray for him to be the leader. And so the only thing I did was I kind of freaked out and said, I just got to break up with him. If I could go back and do it all over again, and I would say this to you guys sitting in the chairs, if you're in a relationship right now and you're not equally yoked, one, start praying for them, but two, don't pursue to go any farther with them until they've had a revelation of their own. And I know that's hard to do, because you love the person and you want the best for him, and you think, maybe I can change him. I mean, I had that thought too, like maybe Mark will change if he just keeps coming with me. No, I'm not the one that's going to do it. God has to do it for him. Mm-hmm. And so, man, it might kill you to break up, and you love that person so much. And you might even think, yeah, I'm supposed to be with that person and I know it, but it doesn't mean that it's this time right now. It could be months, it could be years later, but they have to have that revelation with Jesus before you can pursue any farther with them.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I think when we hear the term, unequally yoked, sometimes we wonder, okay, what does that mean? And what Jesus was talking about when he's saying that is, if you don't know what a yoke is, it's a thing that goes over an ox or an animal that's plowing. And basically what he's saying is, if you put a yoke that's meant for something else, a different animal, a donkey or something, and you put it on the wrong animal, it's not going to fit right. And then what's going to happen is, if you're two people with different burdens, different passions, you're going to start pulling in different directions. And so if you paired an ox and a donkey together, or you paired two animals that are unalike, eventually they're going to veer off and go into different directions. And what's going to happen is they're going to pull from each other, and when that happens, eventually there's going to be a break. And that break is either going to be a break up, or it's going to be a break of your faith. Yeah. And one of you is going to have to give in that. And usually it's the stronger person. And if you're the person of faith, that strength has to happen in stepping away. But oftentimes you see people that walk away from their faith, or walk away from the thing that they said was most important because of a relationship. And I think if that's what's leading you the wrong direction, I think that's a sign for you to say, okay, if I'm actually thinking of walking away from this, maybe it's not my faith that's struggling, maybe it's my relationship that's pulling me away from this. And I think that's just something that we we need to be focused on is what direction are we headed in? You know, because if you guys are headed in the same direction, even in marriage, that's something, if you're headed in different directions, you know, if you want to move to a different country and you want to stay, well, that's going to be a difficult conversation. And so I think that's just so important for us to say, let's make sure we're moving the same direction. Doesn't mean there's never going to be push and pull moments, but if you're going completely separate, eventually something's going to break. And hopefully it's the relationship and not your faith.
That's good. I have something to add to that too. I think when you're just dating, you maybe don't have as many, like you talked about, Logan, what am I trying to say? Like discussions or conflicts. That's the word. I just lost it for a second. Conflicts, right? You don't have as much friction maybe when you're just dating because things are good and it's fun and it's new and all that. But you're guaranteed to probably have something when you get married, and it's going to be that first trial that comes, and you're going to want to, as if you're the believer, you're going to want to grab your spouse's hands, and the first thing you're going to want to do is pray and ask the Lord to enter in. And if they're not on the same page, all of a sudden you're not in agreement, and it makes for an even bigger problem than really what it was.
Totally. Now, you know, you talk about the conflicts that come in marriage. Obviously, it's something everyone experiences. Some people experience greater conflict in dating, other people don't. I think a lot of the conflict that I see in dating usually comes from the external places. It's what's going on in my life at home, what's going on in my life at school, and you bring it into the relationship. But I think in marriage, what I see is a lot of the conflicts come from the internal, is what's actually going on in here. Because you spend your whole life with them. I mean, you're living together, you're raising a family together in many cases. You know, it's, all right, we're in this together forever, and our income, all these things are one. What are maybe some things early on that you guys experienced, maybe in marriage, that you would have said, I wish we would have talked about this in dating, or I wish we would have figured this out in our own life before we got married, that maybe would have saved us some I don't know, some pain or some arguments or some, you know, disagreements. I don't know if there's anything that comes to mind in that.
I'm trying to. We've been blessed. Like we've always, you know, got along tremendously well. Generally,
Never fought. Never fought.
I'm just, you know, early on, I know, like, the one thing we never talked about was money. Like, one of the practical things we never talked about was money. Like, we knew, like, okay, we're gonna get married and we're gonna put it all together, right? We knew that. But we never really talked about, like, okay, well, where should we spend it, and how should we spend it, and what's okay? And I remember we had some, you know, there was some times when, you know, Emily would come home and I'd be like, well, you know, kind of in the back of my mind, and then, you know, of course, I wouldn't bite my tongue and be like, well, what did you need that for, right? And the woman loves her shoes, right? And so she's got all sorts of shoes she doesn't necessarily need, but like, and then and
my wife also has that.
Yeah.
Come on, girls. Do we need our shoes?
Amen.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
I agree, and I love her shoes. Aren't they fantastic? Look at those. But even just stuff like that of like, well, no, that's okay. Like, just trying to, like, just like realizing, like, okay, like, she's her person, I'm my person, but we love each other and we need to get along, and giving her space. You know, we never had some of those conversations of just like, even just some of the expectations on.
Or like, how much can I spend without asking him? Like, what's too big of a purchase that I should make sure that I confirm with you first?
Yeah.
I think some of that stuff is like a values thing. You know, I think that goes beyond money too, but how do I spend my time? You know, what is a night in for me? What's a night out for me? You know, like, what do I like going out? Do I like staying in? All that stuff. And I think in dating a lot of times, and I think I experienced this, and, you know, when you're in a great, fun dating relationship, it's like, what do you want to do? I don't know, I want to do this. Great, that sounds awesome. Like, you know, whatever, as long as it's with you, you know. It's like, but then really 2 months later, you're like, yeah, I went bowling, and I actually hate bowling, but I wanted to spend time with you, and so we went, you know, and it's something that you do. But in marriage, you can't really get away with that. It's like, no, I don't want to do that, you know, and then, well, but you wanted to do that in dating, like, that doesn't make sense. And I think some of that's good, some of that's healthy to say, yeah, you're willing to do that. But I think that attitude and that spirit is something that oftentimes in marriage is lost. And I think that's actually something that's positive in dating, is you're willing to say, hey, I'll do whatever you want to do. But then once you become married, you start to realize, I said this to someone who I was talking to, is, how's your marriage going? This is early on. I said, well, honestly, I realize how selfish I am. And I said, but I haven't done anything about it. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure that out, but it's like, it exposes kind of our desire to be our own person. And I think in dating, it's like, oh, I want to do this. But usually when you get to that point, and I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on this, in that engagement, what were you guys doing maybe to prepare yourself for marriage? Because there's people in this room who are engaged. Maybe there's people who are close to that, getting serious in a relationship. What were some things? Obviously, your faith is taking a new journey. Was there any advice you'd have for people in that engagement journey?
I think one practical thing is like set the boundaries physical, like ASAP, because it's always hard and it's always a struggle, this lust thing we all have in us. And particularly when you're like, well, I know, like, I'm going to marry you, and I know what we get to do after on the wedding night, right? And so, but it's like,
it's called sex. That's what it's called.
Yes. I didn't know if we could say that word here tonight.
Yes, we can say it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But
do you guys know what that is?
But we really did, like, we made some, like, those are some things we did of, like, we committed, we're never, I don't care if you have a couch in the basement and a bedroom on the second floor, we're never staying overnight at each other's place, like at any cost. Like, we're doing what, we did some of those things of just like, we just knew if we didn't, like, it would be, probably impossible to do it. And it was still, even then, it was a struggle as we went just to try to stay disciplined in that area. But I know that was a big thing we did early on of just like, we got to set those boundaries, and because we just knew we didn't want to cross them. Yeah. You have anything else?
Yeah, actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking 3 S words: self-control, sacrifice, selfishness. Actually, service is another one too. Those, if you can remember those 4 things, right? Because self-control, especially as a man, he had to exercise that probably even more than I did. And
Mark's a good-looking guy, though. I mean, come on.
Come on, that's right. I had the same temptation. You're right, Logan. But if we're not going to exercise self-control before we get married, how do we know that we're not going to exercise self-control after we get married? And purity is something that we work on before we get married, and we work on after we're married, because temptations are the same, right? Sacrifice is something that's kind of what Logan was talking about, like, hey, I didn't realize how selfish I was. And so just being willing to sacrifice your time, your wants, your desires, and then just serve. Really, it just comes down to serving. And everything we're saying is just being an image bearer of Christ. Are you working on becoming more like Christ every single day? Because if you are, then all these things should start coming naturally to you anyways. It's things that we just want to do. And it's a mindset, it's an expectation. If I don't know, I kind of learned it was all like about expectation early. And if I expect him to treat me a certain way, then am I treating him that way? If I expect him to do something for me out of sacrificial love, am I doing that out of sacrificial love for him? And so whatever you expect out of your partner, what are you doing to show them the same thing?
You're just talking about, like, it ends up being total commitment to each other, right?
And it's a choice.
Yeah, as you become more committed with the Lord, you kind of emulate that with each other. And, because like you were talking about, well, there's compatibility. And you find out, like, as you're dating and you're like, oh, we're not compatible with everything. And that's okay, but we're 100% committed. So even if we're not compatible, we can stay committed to each other and just, want to serve each other.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's always a choice. We live in a world where just do whatever makes you feel good, or you can do that and I'll do that. And we all have choices. We got to choose if we're going to follow Jesus. We get to choose if we're going to love him and if I'm going to stay faithful to him. It's a choice. And it's a choice you make every single day, from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed, how you're going to treat people, what you're going to do, what you're going to say. It's just all about choices.
Totally. I think with choices, something that I realized, the longer in marriage and the longer, just even in life, every choice has a consequence. And I think sometimes we think of consequences always as bad things, usually because we hear there's consequence for that as a kid. It's like, oh, got it. Consequences are bad. But there's results, maybe that's a better way, results of doing things that are positive. The consequence of maybe sleeping around looks a lot different than the consequence of saving yourself till marriage. And it may be a temporary I say it's like flash paper. It's like a quick thing in the moment, or there's a consequence to being about yourself. Some people go in relationships, and every relationship doesn't work out because we just argue all the time. I just keep finding guys that argue. Well, maybe you argue, or man, I just keep finding girls that don't listen. No, maybe you are a bad talker, and maybe you are talking about the wrong things, and or whatever. But I think sometimes we think it. I don't know. It's what I thought of. Maybe it's me. But I think sometimes we think that is like, okay, the compatibility part, once we find the person that is the right person, everything's just going to click, and we're going to be working on all cylinders. And we just know that's not how the world works. That's not how friendships work. That's not how families work. That's not how business works. It's, no, I got to be committed to this no matter what our compatibility is like. And I see people that, and maybe your parents or maybe people who have great relationships, you look at them and you're like, how did you two end up together? Like, you don't even make sense. Like, you're not even the same universe. Like, you're the most free-spirited person ever, and you're like the nerdiest person ever and all this stuff. Or like that, if ever you see somebody that's like outwardly you think they're super beautiful, and the other person you're like, dang, like you did a good job, or wow, you settled. It's like, wow, like you see that. Yeah.
She settled.
But you see that, and you see Emily, and you go, Emily, what are you doing? But I think a big part in that is what you're not seeing the commitment that's there. Because relationships are not about compatibility. Relationships are not about whether you look like you fit together. It's, am I going to decide, and I think it's a big theme about relationships, is it's way more about us than it is about the other person. Am I going to wake up this morning, and am I going to want to serve? Do I want to get Mac Cheerios this morning? She goes, yeah. She always wants Cheerios every morning. I know that. But there's mornings that I'm too tired that I don't want to get up. She usually goes to work before I do. And so I'm like, wow, I got to get up before I need to get up to get her Cheerios. And it's like this small thing, but am I going to decide that? I have the opportunity every single day to decide that. Sometimes I decide the right thing. Sometimes I decide the wrong thing.
And there's forgiveness.
Yes, totally. But I think that's a big part, and I think that's what you're saying, is it's about the commitment, and it's not about the compatibility. And maybe early on in a dating relationship, you want to be compatible on some things. But what are maybe some things that you guys have that are very different? Like that you would say, we're so different in this area, and then maybe others that you're similar in, and how you've maybe worked through a lack of compatibility but a greater commitment. You talk about, obviously, the shoes. Yeah. I mean, how many pairs of shoes do you have, Mark?
I have enough. It's the ones she makes me buy. Like,
he has about
I'm good
3
with
pairs. That's
3
all he
pairs.
needs.
Yeah.
If
I could wear the same thing every day, that's what I would love to do. Yeah, that's my
He's
fashion
your typical
sense.
male, okay? He wakes up in the morning, has the same thing for breakfast every single day, wears almost the same thing every single day. The guys are laughing because they're like, I totally get it. Sure. And I'm like, take 10 minutes in the closet, and then I take 10 more minutes, and then I take 10 more minutes. So anyways, we're very different in that way. But I would say one of the main ways I see us as different, you can... Yeah, I know. I'm really okay not having a plan. Like, I'm totally okay with spontaneity and just like, oh, let's go here tonight. Or like, I have 25 files on the desk and I can throw them all in one box and know exactly where they go. But he would come and look at it and go, this is an absolute disaster. I can't believe this is how you're going to file everything. But I'm just okay with that. Mm-hmm. And it works for me. And he's the opposite. He's super organized. Everything has its place, and he doesn't want anything on the counter, no decorations, no candles burning.
Can I get an amen, fellas? No?
They're not married yet, so they're maybe like...
So he had to be okay.
You don't realize how many
me.
candles you accumulate. Honestly, we just moved, and I'm like, where did all these candles come from? They're not even burned. Like, oh, those are my favorite. No, you didn't even know they existed. If I brought this box to Goodwill, you would not even know it existed. But no, they're my favorite candles ever. Sorry, that's just my...
No, that might be true, but we need them. Just in case. We need them just in case we need them. So he's had to learn to be okay with a candle burning on the counter and with my stack of 25 files laying in a pile, and that's okay because that's Emily's area, and so he's learned to just leave my area alone, and then I leave his area alone. That's very nice and organized.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just, I mean, that's how we approach a lot of things too. But, and I think over time, like, I've really grown to appreciate it. Like, I love, like, that we're going to someplace and we don't have a plan, right? Okay, well, let's roll with it. And then I think same thing. You've like, okay, hey, I'm glad somebody's organized because otherwise that wouldn't have worked out. And so you just kind of figure it out with each other. And yeah, it's, you kind of, our differences end up complementing each other. And I think, they say as you grow old, everybody says when you grow old, you start looking like each other from the outside. But I think really that starts to happen from the inside as well. My prayer, and I think both of our prayers, was like, well, I want the best of Emily. I want more of that in me, and hopefully she thinks the same out of me.
I do. I do. But it's true. And you have to be okay with, it's not critiquing, it's critical conversations. You have to be okay with listening to your spouse or to your dating, your boyfriend or girlfriend say like, hey, you need to work on that, or you need to work on that. Like, that's okay. That's open, honest conversations. And it's okay to have that if it's done respectfully, right? And I want him to help me be better, and he wants me to help him be better. And the only way to do that is because sometimes you don't see your own flaws and you don't see your own things that you need to work on. And so why not have the person that loves you unconditionally help you work those things out? And so just have critical conversations when you need to have critical conversations.